Okay, so I think we're a couple minutes past our start time, so let's go ahead and call our school board meeting to order. Kind of strange, so we'll try to muddle through this new setup as best we can. But first up on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, which is missing. So if we could please rise here in the corner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Well, thank you. First off, can everybody hear me? Catherine, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Good, thank you.
Well, good to see you kind of at least away from the monitor.
I can't see you guys, but I can hear you.
Good. First up, I'm going to shuffle here a little bit. We had a late addition to our agenda. We have a representative from our high school student body, Naomi Fernandez. Am I getting that right? Typically, we have our old student success kind of agenda item. We have that tonight, and we kind of had a late addition. So we're going to go ahead and ask Naomi to come up to the podium, if you would, and give us your report here.
Okay, and your question was about how distance learning is going?
I guess overall, that's I think kind of what we're interested in. How's it going this year? And if you had any kind of thoughts about
Okay.
How your experience has been or anything?
Yeah. I don't think distance learning is going terribly bad personally, but it is a little bit difficult to be able to have class discussions, which I know to me and to other students, effective class discussions are really important to the learning experience, but it's difficult when students are having to unmute and mute their mics constantly and when everybody has their cameras turned off, and that part is probably more difficult on the teaching end, but because teachers are having to do most of the talking sometimes. And I also did get some feedback from the students in leadership, and they have said that it is mentally harder to learn through a screen because being at home all day makes it harder to focus and harder to stay motivated. And it's harder to separate school life from home life. And for some students, higher level classes like AP and college classes have become more difficult because we're only getting an hour of class time. And then once we log off, we have hours and hours of schoolwork. But unfortunately, we can't do much about it at the moment, and we are aware of that. So it is nice to look at the positives. Being able to sit down and do our work wherever we feel more comfortable is really nice. And we can also work at a time that fits best with our schedule. So we're able to work at our own pace. And we also have more time to do schoolwork because we're not having to commit 8 hours a day to school every day. And classes also do go a lot smoother because students don't really have the chance to interrupt anymore. And also a student pointed out today that she feels it's really nice to be able to wake up at 7:40 and then go to school at 7:45. So that's a huge plus. But the leadership class currently is working on the blood drive, which will be on the 29th at Star of the Sea. Next week on Monday, we will be packing boxes for third world children. And we have decided on what we will be doing for Spirit Week, which will be the last week of October. So on Monday, we're going to be dressing up in orange. Tuesday is Tacky Tourist Day. Wednesday is Show Your Pet Day. And Tuesday is people's choice to wear whatever costume they want. And so throughout that week, teachers will take count of how many students participated, and they will be doing so in their cohort classes. And it also seems that the art class is working on a mural display, which is at the pool. That's pretty much everything for now.
Thank you. Appreciate the thoughts there. And I just thinking back to my own experience in school. I have a hard time imagining what it would be like these days, and you know, we're all kind of struggling to find our way. But I appreciate you sharing your thoughts.
Oh yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
All right, so jump into our printed agenda here on the early items. To recall, board, last time we talked about, rather than the traditional building report, each meeting featuring a particular section of that, having them kind of do a little more in-depth. So as to kick it all off, we have the Azalea Middle School team to give us a little show about, or a little presentation about their year so far.
We've been having a lot of fun recording ourselves on our Google Meet, and we thought we could record it and present it to you, but we'll be live. All right, well, thank you. We are excited about sharing the cool things that are happening at Azalea Middle School. So thanks for being here. Thanks for having us. All right, so we have focused our efforts since we've been in distance learning on 3 key areas. Those 3 key areas, as you can see, they do link to the board statement, they link to the district goals. So the first that we're going to focus on is student success. And I'll try to talk the best that I can. I think I have a node or a polyp or something on my vocal cord, so my voice just goes out. And so I'm trying to figure out what's going on with that. So I'll try to talk the best that I can. But our efforts here, our improvement goal is really guided by the ODE, which they've said ensure safety and wellness. Excuse me. So what we're going to focus on is the social emotional learning and teaching for our students. We have worked on a student perception survey. So we're going to do that 3 times this year to make sure that we're monitoring and looking at the wellness of our students. We are doing a book study. It's called Building Teacher-Student Relationships. We're working on positive discipline as well. So, excuse me, this is just one of the samples of the perception survey. But again, for us, it's really important that we do focus on that social emotional learning, because right now, if our students aren't being taken care of holistically, it's really difficult for them to tackle into the academics. So if their wellness and their social emotional pieces are doing well, we hope to see that their academics will improve. This is just another sample of our survey. It was self-efficacy, and so you can see some of the results there. And again, the third component of that self-perception was social awareness. So what we're doing, obviously October is Bullying Prevention Month. So our counselor is sending lessons to our teachers, and our students are going to get those direct instruction lessons, which all tie into their student perception survey, and we'll analyze the results.
Make sure I can speak into the microphone. I think that's how they can hear us in the recording. So this slide is set up like the others, where at the top you can see our board statement, the district goal, and then our AMS school improvement goal listed out there. And so for this section of student success, our entire campus at Azalea has adopted the SLG goal, focusing on increasing attendance and maintaining regular attenders. We're focusing on this through making meaningful connections and having valuable, relevant, and impactful lessons. You can see we've shared the data there of our population and what % we have of regular attenders currently, who is in our yellow zone, and then our non-regular attenders. As an admin team, we are sharing out data each month with our staff, so we can continue to track how our attendance is progressing and how we're keeping on to our students in our classes. I'm happy to announce that the district attendance plan that we talked about earlier this year has been fully implemented at our building. In addition to the hard copy letters, which have been sent home to those who have been identified, which is on top of the daily calls and reminders and things that are going out. In addition to those, we've added this year sending emails and PDF copies of the letters, both directly to parents and directly to the students themselves. I also did a voice recording of myself reading through one of the letters, and that is going out via telephone call to families as well. So we've tried to branch out and increase the number of methods in which we're trying to reach out to families. We actually had one of the letters turned into clearing up a misunderstanding with the family just today. They called into the school. Nicole spoke with the family. There was a misunderstanding of how attendance was tracked for an academy student, and so that problem was able to be resolved, right? And so we're seeing the positive effects of the attendance plan being implemented. Some points on student success. We are continuing with our Student of the Month awards. So each month, every grade level at Azalea, along with the Online Academy, nominates a single student for showing academic excellence. And a lot of times these conversations are great to see because there's multiple front runners to win the award, and teachers have to kind of compare and then talk about their different nominees for who's showing academic excellence in different ways in the classroom. And they have to narrow it down to one winner, and that's frequently a hard decision to come to. Our winners get personally congratulated in a virtual meeting. They receive a signed certificate, a Bruin Pride bumper sticker, a $5 gift certificate, and as you can see, modeled lovely there in the bottom left-hand corner, a custom Student of the Month T-shirt. Winners have also been announced on our reader board out front on the street here, on our website, and also through we added this year our local radio stations, 95.3 and 97.9, are also announcing our winners. So a great way to kind of highlight academic excellence and success. Our Brookings Harbor Online Academy, we feel very confident in the way we've been able to structure that academy for the middle school students. Academy students at Azalea have not only a daily 50-minute advisory class with their grade level peers, so opportunities to interact with fellow students. Each day they also have access up to 3 hours of contact with an instructional assistant support, 2 hours of teacher support, and over 2 hours a week of content specific teacher support. Ms. Fortnage, our teacher over that program, also has extensive experience running online classes at the college level, and has been a fantastic resource for us and those students. We feel very strongly that if you compare different academies that are available to students and you look at the amount of direct teacher contact time that's available to our academy students, that we are surpassing what a lot of others have to offer, and we're very confident in what we've been able to create here. So also with engagement in the digital world, one way that we've had to adapt and adjust to the new circumstances that we're in is through creating Bitmoji classrooms. And so I've already opened them, so if you go out of the present mode, they're there. So we'll click through and show some of these. The first is our 8th grade team did this as a sort of welcome, and going through different class norms and protocols and sharing with students. They went through the different chat box expectations, found different ways to introduce themselves, uploaded videos of teachers talking, and did content in that way. If we can see, the next one is a teacher example. Just the next one over, I put them in order. Okay, so this one is a teacher example, and the first slide you can see that she kind of made like a warm, inviting environment that students can click in different ways and email the teacher directly, get onto their meets, but then they also have the different interfaces that the students interact with on this screen. So they can click directly to Edgenuity. If they click on Google Meet, that brings them directly into their class where they can look at the bell schedule, weekly schedule, different PowerPoints, notes, and it's all kind of easily laid out and in different accessible points for them here. We also wanted to make our school counselor options available to our students. So this is a Bitmoji classroom set up by our school counselor. She has lots of awesome videos. We probably don't need to do it right now, but if you click the little play button in the back, there's a virtual fish tank. She also has different calming strategies. If you click through her other slides, there's different ways where there's relaxing music, different activities to calm yourself down or to meditate, and also kind of some hidden things as you move your mouse around the classroom that kind of pop up in different places to click. We also wanted to ensure that our student services, all of the options available to students during a typical school year were available. So Ms. Miller made all of her appointments, reaching out to her available through her Bitmoji class. In addition, with student services, you can see at the top, There's office hours. Tori Hall is over student services. Her and another staff member through a grant received special training this year to become trauma-informed specialists. They're available for students to just pop in, to be able to talk through difficult challenges that are going on. They also can reach out to students and set up appointments that way. Students can also click on schedule a meeting and request appointments with administration, with myself, with Nicole, with any other adults on campus, and go through student services, which is how they would typically do it in a school year. Also, at the bottom, it says need to fill out an incident report. We wanted to ensure that if a student needed to report something to staff or to the school, but they were not comfortable speaking or getting onto a video chat or talking with someone, they can click on that. They can type in the report with actually out having to talk yet and submit it that way, so we can become aware of issues or potential challenges students are facing in that way. I think we'll do questions at the end and kind of wrap up.
And obviously, it's a school goal as well to retain highly qualified employees by providing ongoing professional development to staff. So we have really focused this year on providing key targeted professional development, and we did this with the input of our staff. So for us, because we have transitioned to using the online platform of Edgenuity, which is custom for our students that are face-to-face, we provided 2 weeks of training on that, which was pre-recorded webinars, live webinars, and that is ongoing. They also just attended one on October 9th, and that was really geared to the hybrid model, the blended model teaching, having the core teacher and the online course together. So that was really nice for them. They got a lot of support in the grading area, which was awesome. We also incorporated the positive discipline again this year. We did it before we started school, and then we also followed up on October 9th, and we will continue to use that. We also incorporated the distance learning playbook K-12, and that is really supporting teachers from last year. Like I mentioned before, it was crisis learning and crisis teaching, and they needed tools to support students in distance learning, and that's what this training was focused on. So we are kind of circulating that book back in. Mr. Thorson and I have also supported our teachers by doing virtual walkthroughs, and we've really taken those with also a trauma-informed lens to not freak our teachers out, because for the record, they are not all online teachers. They are typical brick and mortar in-house teachers. And so they've had to adjust, and they all have mentioned they feel like they're first-year teachers again, because this is a totally different environment. So we've really approached them and supporting them in a way that's supporting and encouraging reflection and capitalizing on what is going well and how do we spread that. And then again, how do we have focus groups on what is not going well or where do we need more support? And they can utilize each other. And we also really, really want to focus on learning from internal expertise. We have some teachers that are extremely comfortable with technology and they're just moving like light years ahead. And we have others that are trying to still figure out certain things. So what we need them to do is talk to each other and support one another. So again, fostering that dialogue and collaboration. In addition to that, I think what we know by kids wanting to come to school and be at school, if they have a connection and if they have a sense of belonging. That is truly the same thing with our staff. If they have a sense of connection and belonging, they want to be here. They like coming here. And I think we've seen that through some of our weekly connections. So I won't go through all of it, but a couple of things that Marco and I have really touched on is doing appreciation and compliments. We let our teachers know what we appreciate about them, and that's something that comes from that positive discipline training. In addition to that, Ms. Miller, our absolutely fantastic, amazing counselor, she has set up weekly check-ins with our staff on their well-being, and she gives them tools and strategies of how to find that balance, because a lot of our teachers right now are just like, wow, this is so intense, but they want to be here and they want to do what they can. They are learning on the go as well. So she has just been fantastic at supporting them. We also do a lengthy Friday note, week at a glance, so people are aware of what's happening and things aren't coming to them late in the day. They just know exactly what is predictable for the following week. But again, we're in education, things always change, but at least they have an idea of what's going on. So that's been really helpful for them as well. Our third area to focus is obviously fostering those relationships. That's the business we're in, which links to the board statement as well. So for us, it is to increase communication with all stakeholders. And so this year we did our very first ever virtual back to school night. It was super cool. It was really interesting. And it was fun. We had a good time. Our teachers did fantastic. Mr. Thorson and I also do a weekly admin message. So we send that out to all families every Friday. And it's just kind of a shout out or, hey, here's what's coming up. We want to keep them as informed as possible. We have also, thank you, Nancy, for working with our staff in our building because we are now pretty much in control of our website. So they're keeping information up to date on that, which is really cool. I try to stay up on our Facebook and post lots of things about our students. And then I've also incorporated a principal virtual office hours. Again, anyone can link on and set an appointment that's for students as well as family members. Our staff connections are there. I think some of the cool things that we've done is we've really shared this really neat app for staff because again, this is so focused on self-care right now. Headspace, it's awesome. It's just kind of some calming apps and tools. And then we had a teacher that decided we all needed a little bit of, I think, physical therapy. So because we're in different positions than we normally are teaching. So she handed us all these balls and it's Zen at 12:10. So at 12:10, everyone grabs those and they do different physical therapy activities for their neck and their back so they're all comfortable. So just really nice ways to stay connected. And then with the community, utilizing the radio, I think has been really helpful this year for our Student of the Month, and we're keeping our other two areas up to date. So those are the things that we are focusing on, and we hope to continue to add to this list as we continue this journey. So thank you.
Denise, I know you had a few questions.
Our school counselor. Yeah, so also it's so it's open office, actually it's open office hours, anyone can log in during that time. So she has open office hours.
That may have been on the slide with Tori Hall, who's over student services, which her doing open office hours was kind of just an added thing that she wanted to provide. It's not something that typically the person in her role as a employed secretary of the school would fill, but she's gotten special training in trauma-informed practices. And typically in her role, students are able to kind of pop into the office and talk to her or talk to the person in that role. So the idea was to provide a time for students to be able to do that. So I think it was our person over student services that had that kind of more limited time.
Question about attendance in the early slide, the attendance rates. Do you have a sense of if they've changed because of our distance learning or their market increase or increase in those rates?
I'll have to look into last year's data to make a comparison of last year. I haven't compared this year's data to last year yet, but we have been tracking from the start of the school to where we're at in different weekly increments. And we've seen the one big positive we've seen is that at the very beginning, our red zone was higher than where it is now by about 7 or 8%. So some of that was just the learning curve. Some of it was working through tech issues because of the students not able to log on. due to Wi-Fi issues, and they're not able to be
So even
present
so
in the
this year, you'll
classroom.
be getting better rates as the year.
Yes, yeah. So what I've been able to track, because we pull the data weekly, and then we're sending home our notices following the attendance plan, and then monthly we're putting the report in to share back to staff.
Yeah, I'd be curious to think about the future. I'm sure you are too, but how that, I think Naomi mentioned, how maybe it's kind of nice benefit to wake up at 7:40 and go to school at 7:45. Does that increase attendance, I wonder, overall? Is that
I'll let you know in a couple months because we're going to be tracking it every single month. I would say that the other piece of attendance that I've had conversations with families about, it's been interesting. There's been some misunderstanding. Even for our face-to-face kids, some of the families thought that if they just did the work on the assignments and they didn't attend the Google Meet, that counted. And so we've been having lots of conversations with families that there are two requirements. There's the attendance through the Google Meet, and then there's also doing your assignments and your tasks.
So, question. So the regular attendance was 63.5% for regular attenders.
Those are the students that have 90% or better attendance, and that's been calculated by, we take the total number of periods that have happened in that period, and then it's been there for 90% or more of those available periods.
Right. And I think anything above that is when we would, traditionally, we would have been having initial contact and then going through the process of eventually leading to possible truancy support. But so with that, are we seeing a difference in grade levels? So are we seeing because I'm assuming that's an average of 315 youth that you have. Is there a difference, like you have higher attenders in the younger or vice versa, or is it pretty consistent across the board? It's just basically like 63.
Right now, I'm not seeing a major difference between 6th, 7th, or 8th. We have, and we're very early in the year of gathering this data of keeping it going. We haven't tied it to last year's data. We have the tracking mechanism to see who's gotten the first letter, who got the first letter via hard copy mailed, who got the first letter after as a who's gotten the phone call, who's had it directly emailed to them as a student, and then seeing the kind of different levels. What we've had a positive outflow of students this month, which is positive to see, meaning we had a few students who were flagged as non-regular attenders, who were flagged in the last 2 weeks, but weren't flagged earlier in the year. But we also have students who were flagged at the beginning of the year who are now no longer flagged, meaning they weren't regularly attending, now they are. And that flow was a flow in the direction we want to see, meaning we're having more people leave our attendance flagging system than are entering. And that's, so I kind of like to track it in that way to see how many new people, how many people that had popped up have now left, and what's the margin, and that kind of shows us how we're progressing. So, like I said, we lost about 8% of our chronically or non-attendant, chronically absent students.
And then last, is there intentionality that you're able to identify with the increase in attenders over the time? So like if you said, we implemented X interventions and we've seen more engagement now. We've seen more the kids feeling, I think you hit it on the head when you said connection and belonging is engagement. And so I'm wondering if there's particular interventions that you've seen dramatic or any kind of results from with some intentionality in how there was increase in attendance goes.
So those are strategies that are listed for our SLG goals, so our teachers will have to implement strategies. One of the books that we're looking at is Social Emotional Learning in the Brain and teacher-student relationships. And so what we do to track it is, how often are you implementing these strategies? What are you doing? And is the correlation that attendance is increasing because students are engaged and they feel that they belong? So we will have that data. That's why we're tracking it. Does that answer your question? Like, will we be able to see it? That's what we're hoping with implementing the strategies and then watching our attendance. That's
Well,
the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I guess I understand that piece, I guess, but as Marco was saying, was we've been seeing more attenders as the year progresses, And so I was wondering if there was correlation to any intentionality of interventions that other schools we could share with, or we could, like that, because if you say we started out here and we're progressing to here,
Why?
it'd be good to identify the interventions that were utilized along the way that help increase engagement. And it could be a series of things, right? It could be most likely a collaboration of all of them. But oftentimes we'll see with one or two major changes, and it could be as simple as your guys' calls home or whatever the case may be, you saw an uptick. And so that's kind of what I was leading towards. I always believe that, intervention should have some intentionality, and if we're not tracking the level of the intervention, then we're just kind of doing it, or not, because we're not tracking it. So that was I was wondering if you could tie any, we did this and we saw immediate improvement, or
I think we're using a combination of push and pull strategies, right? SLG goal and making connections with students, making sure that our classes are meaningful and relevant to students. That's a pull strategy.
Sure.
We're trying to draw students in. The more push strategies is the letters we're sending home, the phone calls home, the talks of meetings with administration, or eventually truancy court if we got to that level. That's kind of a push strategy. I don't think we're isolating one variable at a time and then measuring the metric. I think you've pushed a lot of different variables in at once. And I think our data is also kind of in its infancy with the very beginning of this year. I think the COVID changes a lot of data across a lot of research, right? We thought we had baseline conditions, and now all of a sudden everything's up in the air. I think one thing we can do is track the different strategies that we're employing our teachers to do through their SLG goal with that monthly update that we give out. Here's the data where we're at, here's the data. And we can highlight a few of the things that we've been doing in the classrooms as kind of those multiple strategies. The push strategies are kind of more in place. It's our district attendance plan that's being implemented. So that's not one that's really going to change over time. But the strategy.
Sure.
You can also add it to the student perception survey. Ask a question in regards to attendance and feeling belonging and connecting, and what made you feel this way, and they can do something perception to add in there.
And then lastly, sorry, I'll belabor this all day. What's the greatest thing that you've learned from last spring to the beginning of this year?
I think something that I shared with people is to remember your passion, or even myself, what to learn and remember is to remember our passion. And there is right now no right or wrong. It is just absolutely give it your best. And we have to have grace, and we have to be flexible, and we have to be open to hard conversations. I think that's probably the biggest thing, because everything feels like it's always kind of moving. And I think that educators are perfectionists, and right now there is no perfect here. And so we have to stay tight. And I think we've really focused on trying to keep that tight family, because I think that's what Azalea is, and supporting one another and catching each other and helping each other out when there is a struggle, and being honest with each other. That's probably, I would say, a lot of big things that I've learned, but just really, really not forgetting that we are humans, and we are doing the best that we can for our kids. That's our number one priority.
Yeah, I think, if you're trying to consolidate all of the reflections over the last month, for me, I kind of always think as the starting point, that's Friday, March 13th, when we waved to the buses as they drove through our U, and students didn't return to us the rest of that school year. And it was a Friday the 13th, and that it was March 13th, and that was a time where a lot of things that were outside of our own control changed in great ways. And I've shared this reflection a number of times in the months since then, but I've really had to reconnect with my why for being in education. And I feel like the educators that I've seen that have excelled through the different challenges and adapted to the changes. They found ways to be innovative and creative, and they've had impacts not only on their students, but on their peers. Our teachers and staff that really understand why they're in education in the first place, because the how of what we're doing has been flipped on its head. The how looks so different. Teaching tiles, creating a Bitmoji classroom, tracking attendance with new rules and new guidance, and then the guidance changes. The how has been flipped on its head and changed every week, but the why can remain consistent. And while I think everyone's had their own personal ups and downs and struggles through this time, and have had time to question the old ways that they got positive reinforcement with their work have been altered, when they have to dig a little deeper to get those positive connections and really get at the roots of why is being education, I think they're more reinvigorated their work and having a stronger focus and desire to do. So, the biggest lesson I've taken is the stronger connection to my own reason for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. Next up, citizen input. Mr. Gordon Clay is with us tonight, and glad we can do this a little more in person these days.
For the record, my name is Gordon Clay from Brookings, Oregon. I hope that the Brookings Harbor School District will join the Curry County Commissioners, the Brookings City Council, and the Gold Beach School District to recognize October 2020 as Bully Prevention Month. While we expect bullying and harassment to be substantially reduced for the previous year, while schools practice in-home online learning, there is one area that is showing a substantial increase, and that is an increase in cyberbullying. Last year, Healthy Teen surveys for Curry County, 6th and 8th graders were asked, in the last 30 days, have you been bullied by someone using any kind of technologies, such as through social media, cell phones, and video games? Over 15% of 8th graders and 21% of 11th graders replied yes. Compared to Oregon, only 11% of 11th graders said yes. That's half of what Curry 11th graders were experiencing. In your packet, which didn't get on the web, Tim Wilson made to the Curry Commissioners on the 7th. It was important guidance on what staff can do and suggestions on how they can encourage parents to get involved. I've got a packet for you here. I asked the State Board of Education on their September 15th meeting to look at the issue of off-campus cyberbullying, including the students that are being required to do most of their education off-campus. I hope the school officials, counselors, and teachers will be sensitive to their students' emotional state, not only in regard to physical, mental, and spiritual health, but to the impact many of them are experiencing. Also in your packet is a document I presented to the State Board of Education on the 15th called Preventing ACEs During the COVID-19 Pandemic. It is a call to protect vulnerable students who depended on in-school learning to protect them from the toxic home environment that they are now subjected to all day, every day. Without face-to-face experience, outside contact with students isn't happening, and thus educators can't see the visual signs and reactions to questions to make the observation checks regarding student safety. I've suggested some ways to make those contacts and are looking for additional input that I can share with the state and local groups like CASA and OASIS and others to utilize the protection to protect our students. Not only must we find ways to build the students' resilience, but to build the family's resilience as well. Also in your packet is a copy of a speech I plan to give today that is statistics on the impact of students regarding cyberbullying, bullying, and to connect to suicide. I have changed that speech. Speaking of the Healthy Teen and Student Wellness Pride surveys, the call has gone out from the state for those school districts interested in participating in a new survey that contains many of the questions from the previous years. called the Student Health Survey, SHS. It will be administered every other year and will contain questions for 6th, 8th, and 11th graders, as well as the Student Wellness Survey has done since the year 2000. I hope all 3 schools will take advantage of this hour-long survey, which provides invaluable information on where your students are right now in their experience with the school and the environment. And furthermore, I hope this district returns to the policy of transparency by allowing parents, students, and the community access to this information and others using it to determine essential needs for future funding opportunities. One thing I hope that is impressed on all students with a cell phone is their access to the crisis text line 741-741. Oregon is the 20th largest state, but ranks 4th in the nation for the use of the crisis text line to deal with suicide. I can provide additional wallet cards for anyone who can use them. On the front is what to do and where to call and text. On the back is the current youth warning signs. I believe a poster was in the hall of the high school last year, and finding a way to reach students under the current learning environment is important for their emotional safety. Half of texters text around the issue of suicide between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. in Oregon. The service is 24/7 and free, and they know what you mean when you include an emoji in the text and whether it represents a lethal situation or not. As the New York State Education Department says, students' mental health isn't a concern to be added to your plate, it is the plate. And I'd like to give each one of you a copy of the backup information.
Yeah, indeed. Good to see you too, Gordon. Thank you. Okay, item number 5, our consent agenda. I would be looking to the board for a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Catherine?
We didn't understand you, Catherine.
Approve the consent agenda. She moved to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thanks, Jerry. Any questions or comments on what we have here in front of us? Okay, let's go ahead for a vote. Let's start over here. Catherine?
Aye.
Denise? Jay?
Aye.
No? Aye as well. Okay. That one checked off. Number 6, district reports and information. So we got a few things here from our superintendent, Mr. Marshall. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay.
Yeah, surprise.
This we received the final notification and the amount that was awarded. And so this is just a formal acceptance of that. And you have the amount of 400 and
Yeah, we have later the approval for it in their action items, but I guess.
okay. So it's just that we went through the process, or the district went through the process last year in terms of developing the priority items and what that money would be spent on. And so that has not changed. It's just with the lesser amount that this first year we will be focusing on non-continuing more capital expenses that we had already planned on in there. For example, probably a big chunk of it is going to be with the restroom renovations that are required and that sort of thing. So
Again, this is the Modified Student Investment Act.
yes.
Reflective of the smaller amount.
Yes, so really that's the only change. So it's accepting that. We will post for public comment, but it's not any sort of revision. It's just a lesser amount, and then we're taking from our existing narrative and prioritizing items that were already in there and agreed upon last year. So that's the procedural piece on that. Any questions about that? And so Division 22 standards, we're in the process of being ready to submit those. This year it did get moved up in case I think for the last 2 years it's been in January that we've done those. It got moved up and the standards were temporarily reduced by the state board. So it is now just a handful instead of the normal 54. So the standards for this year, diploma requirements and credit options, distance learning for all, which was actually back in the spring, special education standards, bilingual, Alt-Ed, equal educational opportunities, school counseling, student safety, personnel, fingerprinting, so just internal processes, student assessment and reporting, student education records and reports, complaint procedures, and then so normally, again, it's a much longer list. So those are the current standards. And there are 2 areas where for this year, actually it looks at last year. That last year we were not in compliance. And so we have a plan moving forward to address it. One of them is our Alt-Ed program. And unfortunately, the only issue is a technicality where the evaluation of the program wasn't reported to the board.
I know we've talked about this before, even last year, right?
Yeah, so we had a program. The program met the rest of the requirements, but we didn't do that piece, and as a result, we can't accurately say we're fully in compliance with that standard. So that's the reason that's easily addressed. And in fact, Ms. Veritek and Ms. Medrano and I are having meetings scheduled to look at what adjustments we want to consider making with the program to have it be more effective, and certainly within consideration of the we have now that we didn't have in the past.
But as far as compliance goes, is there any consequence to being out of compliance?
No immediate consequence. No, it's just you have to have a plan to address it. It will be addressed prior to the end of the school year, so that next time this year, we'll be able to say, yes, we're in compliance.
Is there a board report prior to this time next year that we need to do?
Yes. Yes, we will need to do that in the spring as one of the elements of here's what we're doing for our program, here's the evaluation of the program, or at least informing the board of the program. Because technically there's not a requirement to have a separate program. Part of our internal conversations right now is what does Alt-Ed look like with our new instructional model? And how might it be, best staff, and how might those students be best served? So yes, that is on the list, and we will make sure and have the board report prior to the end of the school year, and then that will address that single compliance element that we were out of compliance for last school year. And the other area is with the Talented and Gifted program, and that it was addressed last year in terms of saying we would be working on it, and I've been working with Angela, and she is doing a very good job working on it, getting that finished, and so it will be done well before and submitted well before the end of the school year. So then next year we'll be able to say, yes, we have a compliant and current questions about
Okay.
Division 20?
Is there any action the board needs to take now? I don't think I saw that.
I think it just needs to be reported, and then we post it, and then we submit it. So it just has to be in the minutes that the status of the standards were reported to. And just as a side note, that we are in the early stages, we'll have basically standards notebooks, so that we're as things progress throughout the year, they just go in there, so that we're just baking that into how we operate, rather than sometimes it can sneak up on you and saying, okay, what are we going to do for these standards? Where most of them are just basic operational questions. And a lot of them just refer to do we have school board policies in place that address it. So we're going to be building a reference notebook and also looking at that as where are areas that maybe we might want to strengthen, even though the compliance is going. So, and last month, we talked a little bit about the update of the AR with the student drug testing, and then the student athletic code of conduct as well as the related AR. So these are in there, complete and updated for your reference. I didn't count them together,
Right.
so I promised that I would have those in there for reference. And again, the update with the AR was simply the biggest changes were it called out tobacco as an offense and had a set of consequences for that, and it clarified the consequences for the offensive and to help make it more understandable for students. Yes. Athletic. Oh. Yeah, so they're not suspended from school for 14 days. This is all related to, if I'm in an extracurricular activity, these are the consequences for me because they actually all agreed to, by participating in a school-sponsored activity, I agree to adhere to a certain sort of conduct. So if they're not in sports, there's no consequences? That's more of at the building level, and the principals can speak to that. So yes, there is. But this specifically calls out just the athletics and the procedures for that and the consequences of I can't play an X number of games, and how many times that I lose the right to participate at all, that sort of thing. So it's more of a clarification on that and making it a solid, consistent implementation.
David,
Yes, sorry. Go ahead.
it just occurred to me, obviously this year's a little bit different because we're not doing games per se. Are we implementing this AR this year?
Whenever it applies, yes, we are. So it's,
Okay.
we will be actually, hopefully, starting some essentially limited contests and that sort of thing. So the year is obviously not going to look like a normal school year with student activities, but we do hope and will have some, and so this will be applied to those activities.
Okay, great, thanks.
And just for your note, on the ACD AR, that's part of the new policy that has the first read this time of the all students belong, and so this is the related AR where we have to have a complaint procedure. So that's in there for your reference as well.
Yeah, again, this is related to, we're going to remove the ARs from board approval because that's
Correct.
not part of the
But obviously,
procedure, but it's here.
want to be informed of that. And that hasn't been changed by us. That's just, this is from OSBA, the recommended, and so this goes along with your first read of that new policy.
All right. Thank you.
So on the goals, as our reports called out in terms of our current goals of student staff recruitment and retention and relationships, what the administrative team currently is working on is more clearly defining metrics that we want to use for this and also in the packet. And so just wanted to, I guess, ask if there was any input from the board on the specific things that you would like to see considered in terms of essentially numbers and data to support these goals and our progress toward those, or things that you'd like included. So any input from the board on that?
This is Catherine. I think it would be helpful because I've tried to pay attention to who left for various reasons at the end of the school year and new staff, but it would be nice to get a sense of what kind of transition we had over the summer. What staff did we lose, and then what staff did we gain, just so we can know where we're at with retention. And I do think it's important to note, with the staff that has left, having looked at some of the reasons, most of them were for reasons because they family or whatever, but for us to be able to track that and know the reasons, and so we can not lose that data in this crazy transition year we've had.
So tracking essentially who's leaving and is there some basic relevant information about why they may be leaving to help inform our process and how have we been in filling the positions? Is that your question?
Well, who's the new staff this year? We've had it, where are we at?
Yeah, I mean, attendance, obviously, the things are usually measured, jump to mind for.
Yes, and that's so with the middle school did a great presentation. We're actually going to be tracking that data K-12. And we're also had some discussions even this morning about how might we accurately track like this completion rate, the kids completing the work, and what's the relevancy of that. Another conversation, and then I think Chris has already made some progress with it, if he hasn't already done it, is being able to distinguish between the kids who are in hybrid mode, so they're PDL right now, but will be in person and we're able to, versus the kids who are full online in academy. It's a little bit different setup for both of those. We really need to be able to also differentiate that data of, are we seeing different results from the kids in these different settings in terms of their engagement, their completion, and their attendance or what. So we did not have that ability in the system to start with, but that has been added so that you can see, okay, this kid's an academy kid, you're online, and track data for those kids as a group and be able to compare as well. So that's some of the elements that we're going to be incorporating. And I'll have some more details for you next month in terms of here are the key data points.
Yeah, I guess I don't have any specific thoughts right here about.
In regards to relationships, because that's a key component, I really appreciated the presentation the middle school gave to really hone in on that. I think in terms of families and community, in terms of data, perhaps we could be keeping track of the connections we are making with parents, in terms of families. With each school, it's going to be slightly different numbers because of the amount of students in each school. But how, like for instance, the virtual back to school night, what was the attendance? Some way for us to get a sense of what kind of connection are we making with families one-on-one or and when we have these virtual events. And then same with community, what are we doing each month? What sort of events or things are we're doing to reach out to build those relationships with community, just to track what it is that we're doing and who showed up.
And as another note, as Nicole and Marco mentioned about the student surveys that they will be tracking, they're given that, they give it once, and they'll do it mid-year and end of the year, so they'll have the data points. The high school is doing a similar survey, and then the other country is doing, it's try to get this right, Melina, the Devereaux Student Strengths Assessment. And so that connects to their mental health first aid training that they had previous Friday for the in-service. So that's a measure, it's a teacher data entered measure on how the students are doing. And so that will be conducted 3 times as well over the year. So we'll have the beginning, middle, and end data points and some students, their own feeling of efficacy and challenges as part of that data that will be able to track the kids.
It's a moving animal, I'm sure.
David, if some of this, I would suggest that if you're able to go back to our DLT, district learning teams,
Yes.
part of the process to identify process ways in which to track these goals, and there was a lot of probably good information that was in those that came from those teams as possible KPIs as well. So, you know, I just suggest maybe siphoning through some of those and identifying the best way you feel is going to not just read a metric, but also give us some goals that will assist in increasing the metrics.
Actually, earlier in the month, we had a conversation about requests to enroll elsewhere. And so I had a handful of them on my desk at the time, and decided then would have conversations with each of those families, and then would, because we are at the 3%, which means that the district could opt to not permit families to leave unless they move, but not to enroll in another online program. And so I think the consensus conversation was, let's not do that yet, and let's try and understand the data a little bit more, and be careful about just saying, no, you can't go, because then that's the double negative of somebody who says they want to be a part of the district and would be unhappy with anything that occurred. I will say, just anecdotally, up in Gold Beach, Tim did 2 refusals once they hit theirs, and in his case, because I said, you know, no issues. Said no, they were fine. So it's a real unknown as to the potential. You know, is that going to create a major challenge for folks? But so just FYI, we are at that past the 3% where that is an option for the district. And so what I have is. So I had 7 requests to enroll. So of those, that I called them individually, 1 had been in Connections Academy since kindergarten and was currently a 10th grader. So it was just because of some changes with Connections Academy that they got bumped back to the district. So they've lived here the whole time, but have never attended our schools. 1 I was never able to contact. I left, called multiple times, didn't have voicemail set up, didn't respond. 3 of those folks, after a brief conversation, and the goal was not to do a hard sell or anything like that, but just to learn more about why they wanted to make that. After a brief conversation, 3 have agreed to stay for now. And it was more just sort of confusion about the options that was. Two did elect to enroll elsewhere. 1 parent reported that her child had a rough year last school year with peers, and so felt that a different set of peer groups would be a good fresh start. I did ask, I said, well, did you report any incidents to the administration? She said, well, they did 1, but didn't want to be a tattletale, so essentially had some potential unresolved issues that we weren't that aware. And so, but she did say that she intends to have her child come back the following year after that. And then 1 of them really wouldn't share any reasons why they wanted to. So of that group. And then looking big picture, so we had this is from the end of last year. So it's not. It was challenging to get real precise data because you say, okay, of all the kids rolled forward, there's always going to be some who don't show and always going to be some who are added. And so we have a difference this year, 132 students different from last year, from the end of the year. But yes. And so of those, 42% of that group have moved. So they left the area, moved for other opportunities. 45% did enroll in a different online charter academy. 6% enrolled in a private school, in-person private school, and 7% of that group registered with ESD for homeschool. So they're not connected to any other school or district. They're registered as homeschoolers. And so we have started, we were tracking it a little bit differently in each building. So now we have a consistent data format that all the buildings go to the same shared sheet as any other student leaves. And the expectation moving forward is that we're noting the conversation on that sheet as well of, why do they want to leave? What are the reasons? And then also just, are they moving? Is it because of something that's not going well here that they want to request to go to another alternative setting? So
I'd be curious over time how that changed. Just get halfway through the school year, even at the end of the school year, have more kids left, or have some come back?
well, some have come back. So what we saw, just so right now, our student, as of this morning when I checked, our student enrollment is 1409. And from like Monday, that's up 6. So we have gained a handful back. And we have also, and some of it's from, a couple of those I believe are folks just coming to town. And some of those are also folks coming back from other online academies, and they really weren't happy with those results and wanted to come back to the district. So that's a little small positive there of we did actually gain 6 back this week. And our estimate, we might not totally agree on our estimates, but there's a group of what we're calling red shirt kindergartners out there who the parents just opted not to send them this year and want to say, well, we'll just have them start next year. And so that's anywhere, 20 to 30 potential kids that just didn't show, but are more potential, especially if we're able to do kind of regular back in person next school year, just the families will have those kids. So that's also a question mark there in terms of how many of them are actually out there moving forward. ODE and COSA at a recent meeting, along with other stakeholders, they're working on legislative priorities. And one of the big questions is the school funding formula. So these issues are not unique to Brookings. And they obviously have a direct and personal impact on those if those students don't come back and continue to, throughout the school year, stay at those numbers or have more students leave. So they have made that a legislative priority, because one thing that you're seeing across the state, there's fewer kids in school enrolled in school in general. So there's more folks just saying, I'm going to homeschool, I'm going to keep my kids home. And so that on itself can have an impact. Just without anything else, that gives you more dollars per student if there's less students, because the amount is set. And then the other changes in terms of potential hold harmless and with the variability of enrollment, that's unknown, but it is a priority topic for all of the different groups, including COSA and the different meetings.
David, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
How many, you called them red shirt kindergartners, is that correct?
Yes.
How many of those do we think we have right now?
Well, it's a range. Some numbers that Jared and Dee Dee had run, and I think it connected to birth rates. It can be anywhere, 20 to 30, maybe 40 at the high range. I would always look at the conservative end in that and saying that there's a high likelihood we've got at least one whole class of kindergartners out there that didn't show this year that could likely show up next year, especially if things are stabilized.
Okay.
Well, and I mean,
One extra class.
Yeah, you would potentially have a bubble at kindergarten. And so, but we've had that in the past where, yeah, it does create some scheduling challenges and headaches with that, but essentially staff get shifted. So you might have one fewer of another grade in order to be able to enable to have another section of kindergarten to accommodate that.
Yeah, look at this great chart here. October 2020 kindergarten shows 85 students, and last year the same time 130. So that's 30 different right there.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's within that range, 1 to 2 whole classes of kids that are out there and coming forth. Just kindergarten.
In terms of the intent to enroll conversation, what are we looking at in terms of moving forward if we continue to receive more requests?
Well, we certainly have the option to say no on those, or we can continue with our current practice of just gathering the information and being happy and willing to accept them when they come back. And we have had a couple come back. So it certainly wouldn't need board action, but is there a kind of thought or suggestion from the board in terms of we'd prefer to just start saying no based on what we have, or let's consider just continue to approve them at this time? The numbers have certainly dropped dramatically.
Have you got any more since
We're not really getting many requests now. There's just trickling in, if at all. And it's been actually, I don't think I've signed one since that cluster of 7 several weeks ago.
I guess my hypothesis would be that, because we're so deep into the semester, term,
Well, we're nearly done the quarter. So.
quarter. We're so deep into the quarter that I think that people are wanting to probably not want to switch this deep into the quarter.
Right.
But I feel like if there was going to be in a conversation where this rears itself back up, it will be at the quarter changes going forward.
For the semester.
Or yeah, so, I've thought a lot about that because, we have a financial responsibility to the district, but we also have a moral obligation to our kids and parents. So, I think for me personally, I definitely wouldn't want to be standing in the way of telling a parent that they can't do what they feel is best for their child at that time. And so I would have to decide on the moral end of things and sacrifice some of the financial aspect, with the hopes of being able to grow, learn, and bring them back. So that's my.
And as we're aware that with our school funding cycle, that basically this year's money is based on last year's money.
Right.
Or our plan. So it's not going to impact this year, but obviously can have a pretty dramatic impact next year. But we're already starting to look at things that we can do to help address that. Because obviously, if we have fewer kids, there's going to be fewer costs. And typically, in former districts, obviously your first goal is to try and address that through attrition. And just the normal. That's one of the ironic benefits of potential turnover is then you just look at reallocating that FTE so that classes stay at a comparable size. We just need fewer people to do that. Also, we know we have a handful of retirements coming up as well. So we've got a solid initial draft of.
Can you turn that on? Oh, sorry, I couldn't hear. Sometimes I can't hear if you guys turn your head. David, I'm with Jay on this. My first thought process is that our number one priority are the students and what's best for them. And so I would, yes, it's definitely difficult from a financial, but I would always weigh towards doing what's best for the student. And I just feel like if a parent is going to express that they're doing what's best for their child, And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to them because, as you've shared, there was oftentimes not clear information on the parent side. They didn't quite know what was going on. So I appreciate what you're doing, but I would definitely would lean against just automatically saying no.
Yeah, I think I probably tend to agree. I think the practice of, keeping that relationship going, and if there's a chance to clear up miscommunication or address an issue, I think that we ought to try that first. But if it comes down to, what's best for the students or what's best for the family, I have a hard time, kind of with you, Catherine, too, hard no, I guess. If that's of any help to you.
And a potential idea for the community engagement piece, but also a proactive idea that we could, maybe discuss a little bit to not have to make that phone call, but some proactive things to prevent that phone call from occurring is, one thing that one thing that the community has not been able to do because of all of the COVID restrictions is meet you.
Yeah.
And so, I think that the possibility of having a kind of a town hall setting with the superintendent in the gym, maybe in the bleachers or whatever, and before the term's over, and just allowing parents to talk about their experience. Was it good? Was it this? Was it that? What would you like to see in the future? That kind of just the listening piece of that is one thing that I think that this community has asked for a very long time and hasn't necessarily fully been able to get. I mean, it is a little disappointing that, we have, we have Gordon, but Gordon, you don't kind of count because you're kind of a mainstay. You're kind of part of this whole process.
Actually,
But outside of, we don't have any community members here, and I feel that there's a disconnect with that, and so. And I don't know, maybe maybe it's the way we're reaching out. I don't know the possibility of using our all-call system to inform parents of these upcoming events, these meetings, a potential town hall. Then we know we targeted every single one of our
family.
invested individuals, as opposed to just relying on Facebook web pages and okay. So.
Virtual fireside chat.
Yeah, because I think there would be a lot of opportunity to just.
Yeah, and we did some of that this summer, but I think just a more open-ended one of just, the kind of both trying to do a combination of maybe in person as well as virtual to allow as much participation as possible.
And expand on our ability to reach out. I think we're missing that.
So for the time being, we will we'll continue to dig into to try and understand why folks are making those choices, but we will continue to solutions. And I do agree that odds are more in our favor if we approve and that someone might come back, as opposed to you saying no, and then they're going to be potentially any little issue is going to be this big potential mountain, and they're just not going to be happy here, no matter how good a job. Okay, so should have numbered my pages.
Academic calendar, is that what?
Yes, but let's insert in there a little bit with kind of update on where we are with the metrics. I sent out some updates. So as you're well aware, so last week, without going into details, we met one of the three required metrics. So what that did was make the earliest possible, assuming this week all three metrics are met, which is very unlikely, especially at the state level. The earliest possible would be November 13th, another Friday the 13th. So I would say that's unlikely as it stands at the moment. However, we're getting a little bit more information. started off as was going to be an initial just quick review of them, turned into a much more involved process. They've involved, our state epidemiologist, OHA, and obviously listening to the different stakeholder groups, and of which a lot of the pressure is we need to find ways to get our kids back in school. And so they're working on taking all that into account, and we will likely be seeing at least some changes within that time. What they did tell us is it won't be like, okay, here's the new metrics to replace tomorrow. So they're calling it a little bit of a runway, saying, here's the new metrics that will be in place right after Thanksgiving. So plan for that and have your action plan on that. So really at this moment in time, we're status quo. If we do get closer and start meeting, and what we've agreed to do with 4-5 is, if we're a week out and we're on track, then we start letting folks know rather than the week, yes, this week, no, that week, and that sort of thing. The feedback we were getting from folks was that was, that was just a bit of a roller coaster, and it wasn't helpful. It was actually more negative, just kind of that, oh, are we going to? No, we're not. Yes, we are. And it also made it more confusing. So that's what's going out is we're going to get some learning mode and get close and let you know. So I think that's, for the time being, that's what we need to do. And then hopefully, when we meet again next month, that it might be a little bit different picture, and we might have, I'm hoping, more ability to bring our kids in. There's no guarantee of that, but I'm cautiously optimistic that there might be some changes that allow us to do more. So right now the process is when we are able. So let's move forward to the metrics are met, and we're able. So what we do is we notify. So that's contingent posting it, doing an off-call saying, we intend to start classes for X grade on this date. And so you do have a little bit of flexibility in terms of it can be a week out. So you can put a pin in it to save that. So even if in the intervening time the metrics changed a little bit, by declaring it, you're saving your place. But it can't be like we declare it 3 weeks from now. But you can do it in the following week. And what I also learned that we got clarification on that we did not have earlier is the starting and the placeholder is school by school. Because we also have to have clearance from the health department saying there are no active cases within the school, so students or staff. And that was something that we did prior to K-3 going, is we sent the health department the list, here's our kids, here's our staff, and they said none of these folks, in order to maintain the confidentiality, they said none of these folks have it, so you're good to go on that. So we would need to do that same process, and so it's by building, meaning our placeholder is by building. So it's a little bit different than we had earlier planned on. Like having 4 or 5 doesn't automatic. Yeah, 4 or 5 doesn't hold your place for 6 through 12. So what we are wanting to do would be 4 or 5 is a little bit of a question of do that together, or you stagger it out a week. And then you can do the rollout like you could do 4, 6, 9, because then you've got all the schools kind of placehold so that if the metrics change, they're still in session and you can continue that rollout and do it by grade. So some challenges and concerns is just when we do that, it needs to go really well. There has been some learning from just doing K-3, so that's even half of a half at any given time of the kids at K school. And so the secondary, there's fewer staff to do all of the additional work that's needed. So our thought is pretty strongly with the recommendation that when the time comes that we do a staggered rollout, just to be able to work through any sort of bugs, make sure we've got it strongly in place, with the distancing, with all of the cleaning requirements. And the other part is, especially with the secondary kids, it's not perfect, but we're well underway with CDL. So it's a little bit less of a negative impact than it would have been at the start of the year, where it's like, let's get them in here. So that would enable us to access the window, but also give us more of a chance to do it really well and make sure that we have our systems in place and any bugs worked out, and we have all the adequate things that we need to do. Questions about that? obviously, if things do change, I'll follow up with you right away on that. And just anecdotally, as I'm learning, we were one of the first early districts in the state to have K-3 in person. And so that's really been a good learning experience. So there's a number of districts who are like just starting it now. And there's even some large districts like Eugene who don't even have considerations for doing it at all until second semester. I think the challenge is, and a little bit of the tug of war, is that you could certainly do things a little differently if you were just pure distance learning. You have some different schedule flexibility. You can approach it differently. And we built our schedule around being able to transition to in-person and or back to distance learning if needed. And so that puts some extra challenges on or more constraints on the So I think at the same time we need to be able to access the window. There has been some conversations about what if we just called it, what would cause us to just say, let's really dig in and do the best job we can. We might get there depending on how things roll out, but right now, my perspective is if there is a window that allows us to bring the kids back in person, that we need to access that.
But based on the student side, and if you feel that's probably most beneficial to students, that window opens up.
To call them back. Now, yeah, so there, and we could, depending on how far into the year we get where that happens, it certainly might be worth having conversations specifically about the high school and looking at, do we want to do that a little bit differently so that we can maximize the opportunities for those kids. And there's already some discussions going on.
I guess that's my size. Is a semester question. I don't know if there's time.
We're far enough out where I don't want to, because some of it can be like our experience with shutting down or having to do the transition to distance learning in state school is, Elena reported some of the parents are like, I just want to go online because I don't want that variability. And so if we experience some of that, I think that could change the community, intent and desire of like, let's just make sure we have the consistency of distance learning and doing that well. From my perspective, I don't think we're there yet. And certainly from what I heard from the board earlier this fall, that we have a window, at this point in time, we still want to access it. Because the challenge of with like Eugene, if they're saying we're not even thinking about it till second semester, and what if the only 3-week window is in the beginning of January for the entire year? Then technically they wouldn't be able to access that, and they wouldn't be able to bring the kids back at all, other than with the exception of K-3. And then related to that, and this is kind of another indicator that we are really all in this together. You might have seen the news story about there was some high school party or gathering in Albany that was connected to an outbreak and actually caused the district to have to pause any sort of in-person activity that they were doing. So it can be something as silly as that has a pretty outsized impact. And sort of related to that is there was also a story today about Winston-Dillard High School. They had to shut down. So far, this is twice because of a lack of teachers and subs. So folks are out, and if they're sick, they can't come to work, and so they just ran out of people and had to call it, and it didn't say how long. So that's a challenge that we're looking at as well. We have a pretty extreme shortage of subs this year. We have been working on what's our plan B, what's our plan C, so hopefully that's far out, but I just wanted to put that on folks' radar that's, if we get a bad flu outbreak, so not even COVID related, but just folks are home sick, that could impact our ability to operate. We're literally down to a handful of and we have been doing some things such as been able to get some of our classified staff we have back to get them licensed as emergency subs, and we're continuing with that process and working with our sub-service to make sure that what are they doing to improve and make sure they get the folks in the pipeline as quickly as possible. Because I know in the past it's taken a while from start to finish to get them on board. We just don't do that time today. So you can speak to any of the administrators here, and I believe they've had to fill in at least one subbing when there was not a sub available. At least one, right? Just one. Looking at our, with the calendar, shifting the subject here. So right now, some of our challenges are, that when we built the schedule with the advisory group, the administrative committee in the summer, we were looking at kids only being able to access half time. We wanted to absolutely maximize that 100%. Kind of a tunnel vision. So, and don't regret that process or decision, but one of the potential or the issues that have arisen out of that is staff pretty much scheduled bell to bell. So there's really not any other time in the day outside of their mandated prep time and lunchtime. So their days are probably more full than they have been just with teaching in the past. And that, and we knew this going into it, but we don't have currently as it stands the PLC time, which was previously Wednesday early release, that is in the contract, is in the calendar, but we just said, we're not going to do it for the start of the year. Let's just press pause on that. And the association agreed. It's like, okay, we know we need to revisit it, but let's just exclude it and work through that. And so, and then again with our schedules, that also is a little bit of a limiter, like with the students who will call hybrids that will come in person when they do. Even accessing the limited in person, so we've been bringing in kids for like CPE supports and doing those specific activities. I actually dropped by some kids working in the metal shop the other day. That was really cool. And for special needs services, those sorts of things. But the challenge there is there's no time for the teachers to do that because they're already fully trained. So that's a limiter. And then where the teachers are able to do that, like some of the CPE teachers, they're not able to do their regular class at that time in order to have the kids come in and do those activities. And typically those kids might also be missing their class in order to come in person. So it's a little bit of, it's a win, but we can't really maximize the limited in person that's available at all levels. So consideration, and this is still a kind of a second draft plan of looking at how we're going to meet this PLC. And the other thing is, and that I think one of the most consistent things that I've heard as I've been talking with staff is we need the time to work together. If we want to improve what we're doing and get stronger at distance learning and engagement, we've got to have time to do that collaboration, to do the work that's intended at the time of PLC, which really we don't consistently. We've had some in-service days, we've had extra time to start a year, but no ongoing thing to do that work. And folks are really feeling the need for that, and I think that's going to be a key tool to help us make continued progress in our communication. So the idea is implement the Wednesday early release is already in the adopted calendar. So that's already there. There's no union action needed to take because we would just be saying we're going to be compliant with the contract and we're going to implement the calendar as it was adopted. So the challenge that presents that wasn't there in previous years is with our current structure, what do we do with Wednesday morning? Because right now, obviously, when we're in person, kids are coming in morning and afternoon, so that has some challenges there where if we just kept the schedule for Wednesday mornings as it is, then the afternoon kids would get 20% less than the morning kids. Plus, we don't have time right now to do more individualized support, offer tutoring time with teaching staff, and also provide teachers some time to do that out and to connect with families directly, which I think is most powerful if it's your teacher trying to connect to you at home, to your family, is going to be likely to be more effective than a classroom assistant or someone like that calling you up to allocate someone for that to do that follow-up work. So those are the main benefits. Is it's critical time for collaboration, curriculum alignment, data teamwork, and basically time for us to work on the needed improvement. The other benefit is that takes care of the contract issue, and there's no user and human to be done around that. The big negative is that in order for this to work and to provide, it would be student contact time, but not necessarily regularly scheduled class time. Is that's less time with kids, particularly right now, K-3 kids. Could be helpful. So what you could potentially see is, if I'm a K-3 student, I might come in for some limited in-person support if I'm really struggling, and we'd be able to target those kids. But if I'm doing okay, I would be doing other activities on that morning, potentially having a class meeting, but I wouldn't physically come to school for my regular scheduled time. And that would be the same when we're able to roll out the upper grades as well, as that Wednesday would be distance learning, intervention support, and the limited in-person. In the afternoon would be the PLC time. So it's not a perfect solution by any means, and it does present some, biggest negatives are the impact on kids physically coming in. But one, we have to address the PLC times and track those. And two, it certainly has not been universal support of the idea, but the vast majority of folks are saying this time is critical. I need the time to be able to connect with my kids and bring in those kids who are actually both at the high school and middle school. Several teachers have said, I've got a number of kids who are, they're coming to class, but they're really not doing it. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of why aren't they engaging and connecting. And some of them are because they're academically struggling. So both of those folks we talked to said, if I could say, okay, you 7 kids, you're coming in, we're sending a bus out, you're coming in on Wednesday morning, I'm going to work with you in person. And so the real benefit of that is, especially if it goes a longer period of time where we're not able to bring in person, this gives us the leverage to more maximize limited in-person. But again,
I do like the concept that you're putting together here of being able to change direction a little bit within the framework so far, to be able to address some of the issues we're starting to see, either student contact or staff timing, scheduling issues. Sounds like you're trying to address some of those, or all of them to some degree. Yeah. So I do like that concept of being able to try to pivot where we see the need to, and stick with the first plan because it's the first plan.
I have a question. How many days of education was required prior to COVID? How many days of education is required prior
The
to
days are defined in the contract. The state defines it by hours, instructional hours. So we can have as many days as we want. We have to have, and the hours have not changed. They've just, what they've done temporarily is allow us to, one, include a bunch more things that we couldn't previously include to count towards the hours. And then it's also defined as the credits today, was at least half of the high school is 990 hours. So
How many?
Half of those hours, 990 hours for high school is at least half of that time, which we're currently compliant with, has to be either teacher directed or so it's essentially a teacher guided activity or direct instruction. So it can't be like, go watch a video and do this work. And so we with our current schedule, we meet those requirements. And so that's really, in terms of meeting instructional requirements, we should still be good on that with how it's currently set up.
with how we're currently set up? But if we remove, I counted 28 days out of 104 remaining
Well, you're only-
educational days.
Half of it would still be instructional time counted under that. So the mornings would still be, it would be different.
But it won't be
Mornings would
instructional.
still be instructional time. It just wouldn't necessarily be regular scheduled classes. Because part of the models and that some of the buildings that worked out drafts are saying some of the time we do our class meetings. So you would still have those, they'd be virtual, and you would be able to do AM and PM, and then have a chunk of time for tutorial, support, and direct intervention and that sort of thing. So we would be subtracting part of the PD, that the PLC count as professional development. So some of those hours in terms of the 990 would count toward that. So part of that would come off of that if you implement it. But But that was also the case last year and the year before, when you have the early release that's already factored in terms of, and I will double check the hours. And the intent is not to immediately implement it, would be more, let's make sure we have a solid plan, and that we've done real clear communication multiple ways with our community and our families, so that we can hopefully ensure it's successful implementation. And then really with the way this year is going, it's like, let's do this, and then if there's a better solution or this creates too many more negatives, we can always revisit.
Did we have PLC every single Wednesday? So it was early release every single Wednesday? Okay.
And that's very common. I mean, the day isn't, I mean, the day varies, but that sort of approach is very common around the state in terms of folks having that time blocked off to do that work.
Yeah, I mean, I did some basic stuff here, and it looked like if we started in November, we have 104 educational days. And we would have 28 PLC days, so roughly 25, a little over 25%. So that would be
Whole day. PLC is a few hours in the afternoon for the staff.
right. But are the kids? I guess the question is would every kid be getting education on that Wednesday, or would it just be the kids who need the additional time?
So again, what we've talked about is potentially every kid could be getting some with the class meetings and the class check-ins, and then having a portion of that time of the morning be available for the most intensive needs. And that would really, we'd want to take that at a building level so that at the middle school level, they can make it make the most sense for them with that time, the expectation of we need to maximize the student contact time. High school is going to be a little bit different. They're going to, be wanting to pull the kids in for the different hands-on things that we're really limited on just because we don't have the combination of the teacher and student time to pull them together. So we'd be able to significantly expand in that respect what we're doing now with the limited person. Because it's very limited now just because of the logistics. There has been some really nice, great activities going on. There has been some really good support for special needs students, but we just don't have there's not the time to do any more with our current schedule. Professional learning communities, sorry. Yeah. So that's in the contract, that's defined as time for, teams reviewing student data and progress, for professional development, and for staff. So it's a combination of those three during the Wednesday afternoon.
And then for the little, so it would be a major change, right? Because the parents now and the kids and everybody would have to make the changes to whatever they've already created to make things work. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I would say K3 would probably be the most difficult.
Most directly and immediately impacted, for sure.
And then if this was something that we were looking at doing for the remainder of the year, I think it would probably be prudent or fluid to then discuss whether we want to continue with the whole everyday half day and have the group 1 Monday, Tuesday, group 2 Thursday, Friday, with the Wednesday intermission, where you're reaching kids directly who need it, whatever the case may be. But
And that, that's a model that we're seeing. Well, really, I mean, those are the two models that we're seeing is one, and then a number of folks are doing the split day like we are. I think in our region, more folks are doing the alternating full day, which solves a lot of issues, but also creates some other challenges here. And it's again a question of, we've talked about that because one of the very real concerns was how close are we on transportation staff and capacity to be able to K-12 implement the split day. And after lots of meetings with Alan and working through the different routing options, that he feels that we can do that, so we can continue, because that might have been a decision that was made for itself, if we said we don't have the staff to do the split day. So the middle of the day is a big challenge, and that it is a lot technically easier to do the full day. The challenge then is though that the kids are only, while they're there for the full day,
Family scheduling, yeah.
and that was our initial conversation, is we felt it was more beneficial to have them just, even though the time was shorter, more consecutive days, more days of the week was going to be more impactful than longer days. So that was a discussion early on, and the way we're approaching it does have a lot of challenges with cleaning and everything like that. But and when we surveyed initially with the families, it was pretty neutral, and there wasn't any strong preferences, almost right down the middle, in terms of whether families would prefer rotating days or part days.
And then we can't discount the fact that along with everybody in here and everybody who is working, all of those parents as well, their buckets are extremely full and overflowing, and change is going to be very difficult. It's so, I would just, advise, my advice would be, this needs to be, as you would say, slow rollout.
Yes.
Or, what did we call, if you're going to bring back classes?
Staggered.
Yeah, staggered. Not staggered, but it would have to be something that people would have a very,
Lots of lead time. Yeah.
yes.
And the other part is that we've talked internally about is there an optimal time? Because really the bigger, we wouldn't want to have more kids coming in person and then say we're making a change. Because right now we can see the most change in phase 3. So to make this change, we want to do it before we change and roll up grades, but right now we can't. So we could certainly continue with our planning and also look at, okay, what, with the metrics change, does that change the picture for us? And that might inform the timing of, yes, along ODE from runway. Let's say, when you come back from whatever break, this is what it's going to be like. So you have quite, so it's not going to be, oh, by the way, don't show up next Wednesday. Just log on. So I agree, lots of communication and lots of lead time for that is going to be essential.
As far as timing on the potential, we don't know. I guess we just told us yet, right?
Yeah, no set time. We're talking about, part of it might be informed of when we're able to bring back, and you would want to do that change prior to that, or maybe even as part of that.
Yeah.
I was saying, okay, we're going to roll up the other grades. We're going to make this change with Wednesday. So we're still, I think for practical purposes, we're not looking at anything before Thanksgiving for a change. But we want to have the details really well ironed out to be able to communicate the specifics of what, the plan and the benefits will be at each school level.
I don't want to discount either. I think we've all got the emails the last couple of days of a few staff members that can support something like this. So I kind of like acknowledge.
I did not ask them to do that. And I saw that. I'm going, oh.
No, but what I did see was, what I do know about some of those individuals who sent those is those are individuals that are in, they have a high expectation of rigor. They have and so I can see the need of the individual, that we receive those emails from, needing that connection and time to make greater impact. And obviously, I think they were all from high school.
And they were all- Yeah, so I have different needs, of course, with smaller kids, of course. But,
And I think also with this change, it's a significant responsibility on us, meaning the district, to maximize the use of that time, both for the students as well as this isn't just hangout time. We have to really dig into the work to be able to work through some of the challenges that were brought up with the middle school presentation, and that right now we don't have the time to do that. And one of the most common things we're talking folks is, it is a big change. It's not just like I can do my exact same way that I've been doing it in person and just replicate it online. The task might have taken just a couple minutes in person, when a teacher tries to just replicate that online, might take an entire classroom. So it is really relearning how to teach in many respects and to do those things that you were quite skilled at in person. What does that look like online? And it's different. So it's not just I'm going to record myself teaching and post it. That's been a very consistent thing. I mean, some staff are struggling more than others. Some staff are really doing an amazing job stepping up and helping each other. A lot of times they'll go in and the teacher, they'll call in a teacher who's more proficient, help me with this piece. I just think you have to take the effect of it. So there's a lot of that going on, but there's also folks are feeling the pressure and the challenge, and most folks really want to do is provide the opportunity that we need to make sure in the future to do that. I mean, that was always the intent of it. Now it's even more important to do.
David, I I appreciate what Jay's saying about us being very mindful in terms of taking, getting the word out there and sharing. But I also want to acknowledge the commitment that our staff has had to looking and reevaluating how can we meet the needs of in so many different levels. And I think this was a creative way of doing that. I recognize that there's going to be some loss. I'm not sure if there is a perfect plan that's not going to have some loss there, but I feel like along with the teachers having to relearn how to teach, even though we have a generation of students who are more used to tech, we certainly still have a lot of students who don't thrive in a Zoom class setting and online. And so being able to connect with those students one-on-one or in person, I think is very critical. My concern is that we're going to lose them. As a parent, I had 5 children that they love being online, but I have the one daughter, nope, she's the junior in college that has to be online right now. So I get it, and I'm grateful that, and I applaud the staff and you for continuing to look at how do we look at all these moving pieces and come up with a solution. And I also appreciate your willingness to say to us, well, I may be back in a month and say that didn't work, which is hard to do, but I appreciate the willingness to be flexible to do do the best we can. So that's all.
That's all that? No.
And so we did receive a donation for, it says we can use it to address any issues for technology. They're originally going to get us some Chromebooks. We're hopefully with Chromebooks, but there may be some certain instances where it's classes where you can get some technology. And so they donated for that purpose. And basically tech for the benefit of students is the only way. So we definitely want to thank them and their generous donation.
Yeah, absolutely. Just in case we didn't make that clear, but Curry Community Health donated this this cash for the use of or purchase of technology in the district. So, so we could send this letter to them. That what's going out.
Yep,
That's
we'll
great.
make sure that gets out to them if you assign it.
Great. No, I appreciate the donation and the support from the community. It's always great to see it and humbling at the same time. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Marshall?
Unless you
What
want
else you
more,
got?
they probably
Yeah.
talk more than enough.
Thank you. Kind of going down our list here. Any questions or comments on the included district reports that are in here? Other building reports and department reports? I love the pumpkin patch idea. I thought it was great.
I appreciate the work that's going into aligning with district goals, and and the social emotional learning that was very present and at all three schools, as well as the work that the other administrators are doing. I'm going blank on their names. Programs, the food and IT. So.
How about questions or comments on the finance report? Or the enrollment summary? I think we hit that one a little bit along the way.
Speaking of enthusiasm, if any board members are interested in coming, like helping hand out meals as the folks come up, just reach out to Cindy. I mean, I've done it a couple of times. It's actually really fun, and it's very easy. So if you got a little bit of time, I think it's there's times in the morning, a couple of days a week, and in the afternoon. And just as long as you let her know in advance, I'm sure they'd be happy for the help if anyone's interested in doing that.
How do we call her?
Probably just email her would be best, and I can connect you as well. So if you're interested, I can just have her reach out to you. Would you like to do that?
David, can you send or have Dee Dee or whoever sending us emails the times so that we can have that and then we can reach out to her?
I will follow up with that.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on to action items. 7A, for approval, the first reading of the All Students Belong policy.
To approve the board policy, all students belong.
First reading of this one.
The first reading.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Catherine. Any discussion or comments on this policy? All right.
Is this something that comes from OSBA?
And actually, this specific policy is we have to have it.
We have to be sure to work with our attorney.
If you make any changes.
Very
This was just my
Good
question.
question. Anything else on this? Okay, Catherine,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Jay, aye, and Janelle, aye for me as well. Okay, item B, looking for a motion to approve the second reading of 1 plus a delete on there, right? Or not, excuse me, there's a few on the back. So, the second reading of the list.
I will make a motion to approve the second readings of the board policies with public.
Oh, second.
Discussion on this group of second reads?
Yeah, so I just needed a little bit of clarification on these going forward. So I know that we get these and we see them and we see changes and everything else. But David, maybe you can help me with this a little bit. My understanding is that the board sets policy, not OSBA.
Correct.
Um,
The board does have the ability to change the language in there, such that depending on the policy, you would really want to get outside legal advice before making significant.
Sure.
But the board, by definition, has the right to say, we'll accept this, we want to change it, we want to modify it. In some instances, not accept it at all and not have that policy.
Right.
But then there might So, correct. Yeah, there's not any sort of, this is straight from OSBA, you must accept it as written, although with the earlier one, that was their recommendation, because of essentially.
Yeah, no, I understand it, but I guess the point would, I was trying to get was the recommendation, but not the mandate to, right? Not mandated to.
That, I think that's technically true, although probably some policies required to have, but the specific wording probably could be changed, with the proper legal advice. A fair answer.
The earlier one. And there's a lot I've done, and it might not be a bad exercise to do, probably not this year, but looking at a full policy review. It's a real useful exercise, because then what you do is you actually go through the whole suite of policies, and there are some where it's like, no, this one's really not relevant to us at all.
Right.
It's an optional policy, and the board just says, cross that one off, or we want this part of this policy, and a lot of those, you can do that without, but there are some where like, you really
I feel like that's an extreme reach by one organization to be able to set policies across the entire state without any regard for their individuality. And I feel like a lot of times I've been just kind of rubber stamping these in the part of the process, as opposed to looking at what the possibility is for what we need or what's relevant to our state. Anyways.
That probably leads to, like I said, probably a policy, more formal policy review.
Yeah, well, and a lot of it, as I understand OSBA's work, is, they get their mandates from, for example, they say, here's a new law or rule, and then so they craft a policy that, meets those requirements, doesn't inadvertently, set you up for issues or liabilities, and that's what they push out. I agree with Dave, but it shouldn't necessarily be that. Yeah, we'll take all these. Thank you.
All that said, we have a motion on the table to approve this set, so Catherine.
Aye.
Denise. Okay.
Aye.
No? I as well. Okay, item C, approval of the SIA grant agreement. This is what Marshall talked about earlier, being the revised Student Investment Act grant paperwork here. So I'm looking for a motion for approval. We have one.
I move to approve the SIA grant agreement.
I second it.
Catherine, questions or discussion on this? I had a question. Do we know when the funds are coming?
It's all official, so it really, once we have this and this is submitted, it shouldn't be too long. What I don't know.
But so it is funded to some degree.
Oh, it's funded at basically about 30%. So originally 1.2 million, I think it's 400 and some thousand for this year. And the reason why we're just focusing on like the ADA bathrooms is, as folks mentioned, while it's still in law and that money is collected in future years, there's obviously potential for other changes and stuff. We want to be conservative and not add staff that we may not be able to sustain down the road. But the hope and the goal is to be able to roll those in over time as we stabilize. The money will be there, and at least at this moment, an optimistic outlook for that specific revenue. and then,
Do we have any public comments on the SAIA grant application? Rolling in the parking lot right now. Okay, let's go ahead and go for a vote then. Catherine,
Aye.
Denise,
Aye.
Jay,
Aye.
Janelle, I as well. Thank you. Okay, a approval of the bully prevention proclamation. I'll go ahead and read it here, what we have in our packet. Proclamation, whereas bullying is physical, verbal, sexual, or emotional intimidation or harm intentionally directed at a person or group of people and occurs in neighborhoods, playgrounds, schools, on the job, and through technology. And whereas research indicates that bullying is the most common form of violence, annually affecting thousands of Oregon children and adolescents. And whereas targets of bullying are more likely to acquire physical, emotional, and learning problems, and whereas children who bully are at a greater risk of engaging in more serious violent behavior, while children who witness bullying often feel less secure, more fearful, and intimidated. Now, therefore, the Brookings Harbor School District 17C hereby proclaims the month of October 2020 as Bully Prevention Month. Be it further resolved that all schools, students, parents, recreational programs, religious institutions, and community organizations be encouraged to engage in a variety of awareness and prevention activities designed to make our communities safer for all children and adolescents. So I would ask for a motion to approve this proclamation.
I'll move to approve the proclamation addressing bullying. I guess approve the Bully Prevention Month proclamation.
I'll second.
Next, any discussion on it? Again, it's an important thing to keep in everyone's front of mind, so I appreciate having it in here this time. Catherine,
Aye.
thank you. Denise,
Aye.
Jay, Janelle, aye for me as well. Okay. So item number 8, board functions and comments. Just as a matter to have it in front of us here, to be aware that there are budget committee vacancies, currently 3 of them. I heard tell of at least 1 application coming in, so I hope we can continue to encourage participation there. The date, again, we need them in by Friday the 13th of November. Right? And certainly that day on the calendar. Also in our packets here, because we talked about it last time and we had it earlier in the packet, but the district goals as well as our board goals have been included here. We, I think last time, asked to have them, so we can kind of have them in front of us again as they relate to district reports and superintendent evaluation ultimately. Those are in front of us this time. Thoughts on those? Anything right now? Specific to talk about right now.
We had people who actually joined the board that were, I believe, Janice, weren't you on the?
Why we have vacancies?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said, Jay.
Sorry, Denise. Yeah, I think one we're going to encourage to reapply when the term's over, right? But regardless, if there's folks in the community that we can encourage, I think that's a good thing as well.
It's going to be a vital budget year, and it's going to be a pretty robust dialogue, and it's
Agreed.
we need some very passionate individuals.
Ideally, yeah. Okay, and then the last thing is key dates and calendar updates. I guess be aware that the traditional OSBA convention is virtual this year, November 14th. And please let Dee Dee know if you want to enroll. There's a very small enrollment fee, I understand. But I did look at the agenda. They always have some good speakers and some good information. So I have to consider having everybody try to attend some part of that if they can.
It's just one day, right?
Yeah.
All day?
Kind of the schedule's sort of in here. It looks like it's pretty packed. So, I have to study a little bit more, but anyway, keep that in mind and then let Dee Dee know to get you registered.
Yeah, it is all day, but it looks like there's a second day. Nope, just all day. Goes till 4, starts early in the morning, goes to 4 p.m.
All right, well,
Costs
that,
a lot less for us to attend this year.
what's that?
Costs a lot less for us to attend.
Budget friendly to attend virtually this year.
Yeah.
Consider that a plus, I guess. But everything else. All right, so at this point, that's the end of our regular scheduled public agenda here. So I'll go ahead and adjourn the public portion of our meeting. Thank everyone for their time and attendance tonight. We'll take a short recess and we'll be doing executive session.